Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rob's Movie Reviews. I hope everybody had a fun and safe Halloween. I certainly did. Me and my kids sat up half the night gorging on candy and watching our favorite horror movies. We had a really good time. I hope you all did too. But now that Halloween is over with and we're into the month of November, it's time for me to quit doing horror movies. I know I've done quite a few here for the last couple months. I love my horror movies, and I wanted to do a big lead into Halloween. But I want to take this week to discuss a very, very good film. It's one of my all time favorites. It's a classic from the year 1950. It was released by Paramount Pictures. It stars William Holden, Julia Swanson, Cecil DeMille doing a cameo appearance playing himself. And I'm talking of none other than the great Moudwar film Sunset Boulevard. This is a terrific movie. If you haven't seen this, you really need to check it out if you're into classic, especially the old black and white Moudwar films. This one is probably one of the best ever made. It's one of my personal absolute favorites. The story is centralized around the character Norma Desmond, played by Julia Swanson. Norma is a aging actress. She was a superstar in the days of the silent films. Unfortunately, when Hollywood started doing talkies, as they were called back in those days, she was unable to transition over to the making the sound films. She was one of those actors, classic actresses that was trained in doing all her acting with her facial expressions and body language, and she just couldn't make the transition, and she faded off the scene. She's been off the scene for quite a few years now, but that's when she hires a washed up writer from Chicago. He came out to LA to try to make it as a screenwriter. He's had very little success. William Holden, as he plays the character Joe Gillis. She ends up hiring him to help her write the screenplay for what she believes is going to be her big triumphant return to Hollywood. And of course, he reads the what she's already got written, and he knows it's garbage. But she's offering to pay him a whole lot of money and let him live in her house. And he's just trying to get up enough money at this point so that he can head back home and hopefully get his job back as a copywriter for the newspaper he worked for in Chicago. So he takes advantage of the situation. What he doesn't expect to happen is that Norma falls in love with him during the process of the time he's spending there living in her home and them working together on this screenplay. She actually begins to develop legitimate feelings for him. And once he does realize that that's happening, he kind of uses that to his advantage. He plays on her emotions. He's really not a great guy. He's really kind of a scoundrel, He, like I said, he knows the screenplay's garbage. He knows that Hollywood's not going to touch it, and he knows that her feelings for him are genuine, and he kind of plays into that and uses that to manipulate her. Also, what he didn't expect to happen was that he meets a young lady who works for the movie studio where Cecil DeMille, the famous director who actually plays himself in this film, makes a cameo appearance. He's the one that Norma intends to take the screenplay to when it's done. She wants him to direct her comeback film. The young lady works for him, so Joe meets her. He begins to develop feelings for her, and then he finds out that she's actually engaged to be married to a friend of his, which just causes more complication. But in the end, he finally has an attack of conscience. He realizes what he's doing is wrong. So he confronts Norma. He tells her that he can't do this anymore, that he's just going to go back home And as he tries to leave, I don't want to spoil the ending of the film for you. It's a very iconic scene. Let's just say that he doesn't make it out. I'm not going to say anything more than that. You really need to see this movie for yourself. It's kind of a sad film in the respect that the character Norma Desmond, at the end of the movie, she kind of slips into a state of just total madness. She loses complete touch with reality. She just gets developed in a fantasy world. And it's kind of sad because even though this is a movie, that's the kind of thing that happens to people who build their entire life around show business, and then when it goes away, they just can't deal with it. And some of them succumb to living in a fantasy world and still believing that they're on top when they're not. And it's what happens to Norma. But it's a wonderful film. Julia Swanson is absolutely brilliant in the movie. I had never seen her before till I saw this film, and then I found out why. She was the perfect person to play the role because Julia Swanson herself had been a huge star during the silent movie era and had trouble transitioning. She basically was Norma Desmond. In the nutshell, she really was. And so she was the perfect person to pick to play this role. And for somebody who they claimed had trouble transitioning over to the talkies, she did a wonderful job in this movie. She is brilliant. She really makes you feel sympathy for her character. When she slips into madness, she's very convincing. Everything she does in this movie, she's very, very convincing in the role. William Holden, I mean, there you go, William Holden. He's brilliant. He was a Hollywood legend for years. Tremendously wonderful actor. He did a great job in this film, and I can't recommend it enough. If you're a fan of classic cinema from the 1940s and 50s, especially the era of the boudoir films, you're going to absolutely love this movie. I can't recommend it enough. You really need to check it out. It's available on Blu-ray and on DVD. I don't know if it's on any streaming services. I would think that it is, but I really haven't researched that. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say most likely it's available on at least one or two different streaming services. But this is a great movie. You owe it to yourself to check it out if you're a fan of classic Hollywood cinema. This is a great movie. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this week's review. Be sure to join me back here next week when I'll be reviewing another movie for you. So until then, you all take care.